Earlier this week, a news anchor on WCBS Radio 880 in New York, Wayne Cabot, lumped me in with a bunch of conspiracy theorists and actually led his audience to believe that I was part of a cabal, and maybe even the leader of the cabal, suggesting that the students from the high school on TV talking about the shooting were not really students, and they were hired actors. And I never said that. I never even got I didn't even know that that allegation was out there until the morning I came in here doing show prep and saw my name attached to it. I didn't even know that allegation or that conspiracy theory was out there. Yet here I am lumped as the leader, which I understand if the left wants to tar and feather and impugn conservatism, they go after the titular head, the person they think is the titular head, and that would be me. So at 5:30 this morning on WCBS 880 in New York City, Wayne Cabot.
Wait a minute, is the first one? Yeah, we're going to first play what he said originally. This was Wednesday. I'm sorry, this is not the apology. This is Wednesday.
In this atmosphere where the media are suspect, where all of us are trying to discern real from fake news, we here at WCBS were called out Wednesday by Rush Limbaugh over a report that I had read that morning. We want you to hear what Rush said and let you decide if he's right.
So to illustrate this, we're going to start with audio from WCBS News Radio 880 in New York. This is the co-anchor Wayne Cabot reporting how I and other conservatives are reacting to student-led anti-gun protests resulting from the shooting last week in Florida.
Right-wing groups are claiming conspiracy, as some of the Parkland students, they say, are actors who travel to the sites of shootings and push a liberal agenda. In fact, President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., is among those who liked a pair of tweets about 17-year-old David Hogg, portraying Hogg as the son of a retired FBI agent being put in front of the cameras to defend the FBI while being manipulated and coached by the Democratic Party and gun control activists. The conspiracy theories are being picked up by people like Rush Limbaugh on WOR Radio, who says everything the students are doing is right out of the Democratic Party's playbooks.
Picked up the conspiracy that the two students are actors. I didn't even know that this thing had been launched, as I say, until today. So now, here is at 5:30 this morning, the same guy, Wayne Cabot, at WCBS 880 radio in New York.
Well, let me say it. Rush Limbaugh has a point. We were not careful enough to distinguish his comment from the earlier comment about paid actors. The insinuation was that Rush was buying into that claim, and that was careless here on WCBS. I should have caught that. We also should not have used the term right-wingers. How often do you hear us or anybody else in the mainstream media refer to left-wingers, right? You never hear that. Both terms are politically charged, not helpful at all in communicating objectivity. So, Rush Limbaugh, you are right. We got it wrong. We will do better because we are better than that. We really do strive to get it right.
That was 5:30 this morning at WCBS Radio 880 in New York. That doesn't happen. Literally doesn't happen. This may be, I can't remember the last time there was a formal, acknowledged apology like this. I don't think there ever has been. And yeah, I said Rush is right. It didn't sound like he was particularly pained saying so, did it? Rush has a point. Rush Limbaugh, you are right. So that's Wayne Cabot again at 880 in New York, WCBS. Now, that was at 5:30 this morning. However, the lie continues to spread. By his reference to right-winger, left-winger, everybody's prisoner to what they read, and conservatives are constantly referred to as right-wingers. Liberals are never referred to as anything. I mean, maybe they're called liberals someday. Mostly they hide behind this term progressive, but rarely anywhere in standard, ordinary, everyday news copy will anybody ever be described as a left-winger. Barely described as a liberal. They're not even described, not even characterized. Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer in Washington today said about ultra-conservative right-winger Rush Limbaugh, and Chuck Schumer's never described. But let's now go to the BBC Radio 5 in the UK. This was yesterday, Up All Night with Rod Sharp and correspondent David Willis speaking about the students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the recent anti-gun activity.
A lot of these students have found themselves under attack already from, if you like, those who operate on the fringe of things and have suggested that they're plants in some cases, that these are actors. Indeed, some of those
suggestions, I think, made by some prominent media people, including the radio host Rush Limbaugh. He's
Rush Limbaugh, indeed, yes,
telling this story, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
They just love saying my name. They say, Rush Limbaugh, yes, Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh, of course, the right winger, Rush Limbaugh. Of course, these guys are dead wrong to boot, and they probably will not hear that they are dead wrong. And the odds that they would correct themselves at the BBC, fat chance of that. So the subject, however, nevertheless continued till last night on the Fox News Channel. One of the guests was Joe Concha, who Joe Concha used to be with Mediaite. Where Joe Concha is now at The Hill. He's the media correspondent at the Hill, and he was asked to respond to this clip that was played. Something I said about the CNN event.
In terms of the CNN town hall last night, this is Rush Limbaugh talking about that.
What'd the audience do last night? The audience booed Marco Rubio. The audience booed Dana Loesch. This is what indoctrination looks like. This is what a lifetime of propagandizing and indoctrination in the schools looks like. Now, that is a segment of the bite where I went on and characterized this whole thing as, remember, the student stands up and says to Senator Rubio, Senator Rubio, I can barely look at you. Looking at you reminds me of the barrel of an AR-15. I feel like you're a murderer. I feel like I'm going to die standing here looking at you. And we all know what happened to Dana Loesch. She was accused of being a murderer, and people said, die, B-I-H, and burn this and burn that. And the anger, I'm not going to characterize whether it's real or manufactured, but it is totally misplaced and misdirected. And CNN knew it. CNN got exactly what they wanted. Jake Tapper made no effort to try to control this, except when Bill Nelson got the wrong question. Did you hear about this? CNN's out there denying that questions were written for people, denying that there was any kind of planned strategy to this thing. And yet somebody stood up and started asking a question of Senator Bill Nelson. I'm looking to see if we've got the bite here. I know I read about this. We may not have the bite. And Jake Tapper stopped him. Whoever asking the that question is not for you, Senator. Sorry. And whoever was asking the question sat down and was never to be heard from again. So anyway, here's Joe Concha, who is the media critic and analyst at thehill.com, reacting to all this.
From a theatrical standpoint, you had all the ingredients for confrontation, right? You had a room that was obviously on edge, very emotional. And then you had these sort of polls and stats in terms of the wind at the back, in terms of making this the way it was, where it really wasn't a learning experience or an exchange of ideas, but one side attacking another. Quinnipiac, one day before the town hall, Martha. Question, is it too easy to buy a gun in the U.S. today? American voters say yes by a 64% margin. Question, does Congress need to do more to reduce gun violence? Voters say yes, 75 to 17%. So when you have all those headwinds and that kind of crowd, you're not going to learn a lot. You're going to get the kind of confrontation that only leads to division and doesn't really move the ball down the field.
Precisely. There was no attempt at a town hall. That was not a town hall. That was televised therapy, televised catharsis. I don't know what you want to call it. But that event occurred as a vehicle and an opportunity for people who had nothing to do with this to be blamed for it and yelled at and shouted at and fingers pointed at. Marco Rubio, Dana Loesch, nothing to do with this event. And ditto the NRA. And yet there are your targets. And right there, making it all possible and steering it and directing it and producing it is none other than CNN. Emailer said, Rush, what show was Joe Concha on? You didn't say. That was the Story with Martha McCallum. This is where Joe Concha was last night. Fox and Friends also agreed, by the way, with a point that I made. I was on a roll in the drive-bys yesterday and the rest of the media. Fox and Friends today agreed with a point I made yesterday that there may be actually something changing on the school shooting front. I said because of Donald Trump. That something feels different about this. And here is Ainsley Earhart on Fox and Friends.
Rush Limbaugh said yesterday he's confident the president will.
This is going to get fixed, like taxes got fixed. The military is in the process of being rebuilt. That's going to get fixed. We are going to fix things to do with Obamacare. You may not like the way Donald Trump talks and speaks. You may not like the fact that Donald Trump tweets, and you may not like the way Donald Trump walks, and you may not like this or that about Donald Trump, his behaviorisms and his manner and so forth. But if you ignore that and take a look at what Donald Trump, the president, is accomplishing and what he's doing, when he was on the campaign trail, he said, we're going to make America great again. And as often, he said, we're going to make America safe again. It was in context largely to do with illegal immigration. But they're going to fix this. And the Deuce, Steve Ducey, following up on this, said, you know what? And this is a broken record for Ducey talking about me. He said, you know what? Rush could be right.
You know what? He could be right. We've sat on this couch for many school shootings, sadly. But this time, things just seem different.
That's right. You have a commander-in-chief standing up, willing to speak blunt truth.
Right. It's not just that something feels different or that it feels different. It's who Trump is. Trump remains an outsider. He comes from a world where you have to do things. You can't talk yourself into building a series of hotels. You can't talk yourself into building world-class golf course. You have to do it. He's a doer.